This is Patti Negri. Welcome to the Witching Hour. The Witching Hour, when magic happens, usually late at night, but now it's whenever you happen to be tuning into this podcast. And the magic in this podcast is in my beautiful, magical, amazing guests. I bring you the best in witchcraft, occult, spirituality, all sorts of medical sciences from all over the world. And yes, to follow a trend we are doing of late, we're going all the way across the pond again. And I want to introduce you to Zoe Howe. Zoe is an internationally published author, artist, musician, and solitary beast. I'm going to say that last part again. Zoe Howe is an internationally published author, artist, musician, and solitary witch based in East Anglia, UK. She has 13 books published, including her best-selling biography of rock's own witchy woman, including the best-selling biography Stevie Nicks, Visions, Dreams, and Rumours. Howe is a regular host of the award-winning UK station Soho Radio with her popular show Rock and Roll Witch. And she has also appeared on UK TV and radio outlets, including the BBC and Sky Arts. Her work has been acclaimed by publications including The Guardian, The Sunday Express, Teen Vogue, Rolling Stone, and elsewhere. She currently is the Royal Literary Fund Writing Fellow at Newnham College, University of Cambridge. Well, I'm impressed and I just like her anyway. So welcome, Zoe. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Patti. It's a real pleasure.
I love your book. I just recently got your book. I love that you're approachable to everybody. It's very similar to the way I work and my way of being, that everybody can put this magic into their life. So your book, Witchful Thinking, The Wise Woman's Handbook for Creating a Charmed Life. So tell everybody, my listeners who may not know on my side of the pond, a little bit about you, how you got to where you are, your path, how you ended up in this beautiful witchy world.
Well, first of all, thank you for your lovely, kind words about the book. It's
Oh,
lovely to hear. It's so nice when you're conjuring these things up. You know, they very much come from the heart, and when people you respect give you lovely feedback, it always means so much. So thank you, Patti. Um, but yeah, so how did I get? Well, I suppose essentially, I mean, some of this is in the book, but I come from a family that, although I suppose we never would have really used the word witchy, I think modern day witches would recognize a lot of things that we were into, the conversations we had and continue to have, and the things we did and do as a kind of witchy life, and in terms of, I suppose at the very basic level, connecting with nature, having a real kind of connection with astrology, with spirit, in a very kind of, I suppose, in a very ultimately kind of folk magical way. So a lot of what I talk about in the book is very much connected to nature and folklore. I'm from the British Isles and I have Irish heritage, so that feeds into it as well. But I have in my sort of my grandparents were, my grandfather was a healer, my grandmother was very psychic, and there was sort of, spiritualism there as well. So all of these things were feeding in, but in a very kind of, everyone in my family wore it very lightly, put it that way. My grandparents were kind of very down to earth and working class, but these things were just part of their lives, not sort of spoken about particularly at all to anyone that you thought wasn't maybe simpatico. But it's interesting, and I know that you will have felt this too, Patti, that it's really not that long ago that the word witch it still feels emotive now, doesn't it? So it's not that long ago that it would kind of maybe raise eyebrows in certain circles. Still, it would maybe cause suspicion, maybe at best make someone think, oh, they're a bit of a weirdo, and at worst cause some sort of serious alienation and persecution, even just a few years ago. So there's been a real reclaiming of the word, which I think is wonderful. And we have the sort of community of baby witches to thank for that, and the kind of that's wonderful to see it reclaimed. But at the same time, I think there are people of my generation and older who still feel a little bit private about it. But I think what I wanted to do with Witchful Thinking was to say, well, this is a book that, you know, you might not want to go down the witchy path, or you might not want to go, or you might, but, you know, witchful thinking is about sort of connecting with the magic that's around all of us, you know, whatever we identify as, it's there for us all the time, it's within us. So I really wanted to kind of tap into that, really.
That's beautiful. Again, very similar to the way I work and what I do. It's like, I don't care if you don't have to become a witch. You don't even have to use those words, but grab your power. It's about
Mm,
power. And I
yeah.
see that you very much, you talk about the wise woman archetypes and things like that. So what does that mean? Okay. So I've got some new people going, okay, archetype, wise woman archetype. What are we stepping into here? What is that?
Well, for me, I mean, I can only sort of talk about these things from sort of where I'm, you know, my own experience and my own sort of feelings about it. So, but to me, the wise woman, or the cunning woman, in you know, in the British Isles, we would have figures historically in village life known as the cunning woman or the cunning man, which, well, I suppose we would now call a wise man or a wise woman of the village. And you know, people looking back on that think, well, they were witches, they were white witches. Again, they would never have used those terms because they would
Yeah.
have, apart from anything else, been, you know, a bit of a red flag to maybe undesirable people who would have wanted to do them harm. Um, but yes, it's very much looking at that kind of cunning woman, wise woman trope, if you like, to kind of find that figure within ourselves and kind of be guided by that figure. By it's a sort of symbolic thing, really, I guess. But she kind of, or the idea of that sort of figure, guides us through these different ideas in the book, that in some cases may feel quite archaic, but actually they're just part of nature. And I suppose it goes back to that pagan thing. I mean, literally, the word pagan, it just means of the country. And so a lot of these things were just very normal to people living the old ways, living with nature in the country a few hundred years, you know, before the Industrial Revolution. And now it's like we're trying to find our way back to them. But I recently actually moved to the countryside, in Norfolk in East Anglia. And I'm finding it's really interesting going from a sort of relatively urban environment to the countryside, because you're like, wow, all these things that I was like really working hard on trying to access, you know, and connecting with these sort of turns of the wheel of the year, for example.
Mhm.
When you're in the countryside, it's just around you all the time. You don't even have to think about it because it's absolutely intrinsic to what, you know, the people around you. They're not kind of identifying as witches or pagans, but it's like, yeah, absolutely, they are completely connected with the folklore and the magic of the nature and the things that are, you know, the phases of nature. That's very natural to them, and it's just really interesting to go back to. It is interesting going back in time. So.
Yeah, because it's the seasons. You really get to live the seasons, and you see it in the trees and the nature and the weather and the temperature, everything. I think
Yes.
that's what we've gotten so far away. Especially, I live in the middle of the city, though I live in the hills, so I'm really lucky. I have the best of all worlds. But so many
Mhm.
people, you know, you have controlled air, you have controlled light, you have controlled seasons, you have controlled everything. They've lost touch. And I think one of the best things about this new resurgence, or whatever we want to call it, of paganism or the witchy world, and is an awareness of this planet, because we need it. We need it right now. If we don't have it, we're like blowing ourselves up. So it's like, yeah, we're standing right here. So it, I don't even have words for what this means. So much more than even somebody's spirituality, what we're going to get. This is our
Absolutely.
planet.
Yeah. Yes, and I absolutely agree with you. And I feel like, you know, it's interesting what's sort of coming to our consciousness at this time. And, you know, I mean, as you say, we need it. We need people to kind of pay attention because, you know, it's Mother Earth. You know, this is it's she's talking loud these days. We need to listen to her and do what we've got to do, and get back to something that is true and compassionate. And I think, as you were saying in your last episode, actually, I was listening to that the COVID pandemic has really kind of made people, kind of upped a lot of people's empathy, and I think made
Mhm.
us connect in ways that we maybe had taken for granted before.
Yeah.
And I think it's making us look at nature in the same way. A lot of people started going back to that. A lot of people during the pandemic, the lockdowns over here, they started remembering, well, hang on, nature's not closed, nature's not locked down. I can go to the forest, or I can go to this, you know, to the beach, and you know, just walk across that field that I just, you know, I knew it was there, but I never bothered. And I think it really caused a connection with that again, and people were hearing birdsong again because people weren't flying, and so that
Yeah.
the nature could come back. It was this extraordinary thing. So yeah, it's been very interesting to see people reconsidering their place within that and thinking, hang on, maybe I don't want to live this super urban, super mundane life. Maybe I want to kind of connect with something else. It's very
Right.
interesting.
Right. And whether or not I live in the middle of a city or not, we don't have to let
Mm.
go of it. So I think it
No,
was a big old wake up call, no matter where you live. So what are
absolutely.
some of the things that, I know you go into little parts with the book, and I like how you do every which way and you go as so below, as above. You're using phrases and quotes. Oh, those are witchy phrases, as within, so without. So what are some of your ideas for people going, okay, I'm going to get this book but as I get this book, what are some of the things that you do ideally think somebody to live a more charmed life? Awarenesses or practices or spells or rituals?
Well, I think again, to that connecting with nature, connecting with the seasons and the changes, connecting with the moon. I mean, these probably sound like really kind of obvious things to suggest, but
Mhm.
they're obvious because they're so important. I think we can't if nothing else, recognizing the effects of the moon on ourselves, on nature, on our animals, is really exciting, but also really useful. I mean, I even find with my own husband, he's a sensitive chap, but he he has his limits with how witchy he can go. But whenever he's sort of feeling a bit blue, it's like, well, hang on, what's the moon doing? Oh, it's the dark moon. You always feel like this during the dark moon, and it's something you can't deny. So getting to know those phases can also help you kind of plan ahead. If you think, oh, it's the dark moon, then maybe that's not the best night to sort of plan my party. I don't know if anyone's parties at the moment, but or oh, it's going to be full moon, so I tend to get a bit moody then, or I can't, if I have more than a couple of drinks, it amplifies our energy, doesn't it? So it kind
Yes.
of helps you when you know those phases and cycles, getting to know the kind of astrological cycles and the retrograde cycles can be very useful as well. And these are things that, again, people who aren't otherwise sort of witchy or into that kind of thing are getting into. I hear a lot of people who I wouldn't expect going, oh, is it Mercury retrograde? Because my computer's
Yes.
doing all sorts of weird things. And I think, oh, wow, these things are kind of the fronds working their way into, mundane,
Date.
areas of life that we might have looked at as mundane. But also, I think, one thing that's at the heart of it, I suppose, is trying to kind of get ourselves to sort of just listen to our instincts more. We've kind of lost our way with our intuition, I think, on a day-to-day level. I don't just mean when we're meditating or when we're kind of involved in our magical practice, whatever that may be. I mean, moment by moment, day by day, learning to trust that again. And of course, that very much depends on our own experiences. And I think sometimes, depending what we've been through, sometimes we don't always trust our instincts, or we second guess ourselves. But I think getting into a practice where we allow ourselves to trust our instincts in quite, playful ways, maybe harmless ways. So we might think, well, for example, if I'm in the supermarket and I've wandered off and I can't find my partner, and instead of kind of looking, everywhere, or sort of calling him on my phone, I'll just say, "Feet, take me to him. Just take me," and I'll let my feet take me, and invariably I will find him. Things like that. And it's just, well, I might not have otherwise trusted myself, but just give it a try. And the more you do it, the more you can rely on your intuition. When you're looking for something, you may do this, Patti, as well. When I'm looking for my keys, I live in, a slightly chaotic cottage.
I
And,
get that.
rather than sort of freaking out and kind of turning everything upside down, which invariably I won't even find it that way, I'll just say, I'll just try and tune in with the energy of the object I'm looking for, and just say, well, where are you? Just show yourself to me. And invariably it just will. So those little things, little tips and tricks are in there to sort of just say, just give it a try and see if it works. And it's so exciting when it does work.
I
It's quite
love
simple.
that, actually, especially finding people in the supermarket. I've never even put that together or thought of that. It's like, where are you? Grab the phone. Oh, they didn't bring the phone. They left their phone. It's like I go all of a sudden mundane. I can't wait to lose somebody in a supermarket now.
That's
Oh,
great.
because I agree with you. And we do need things to like trust spirit, trust that ourself, whatever else you believe in. And
Yeah,
I give people those kind of exercises all the time too. It works on your faith and your ability and connection, not it with the whole
absolutely.
supermarket people thing. You just inspired me.
Oh, yeah. That's so nice to know. But it's so true, isn't it? Because I think sometimes we do it when we're like, right, I am doing a magical thing now, or then we get. But it's the thing is, if you're doing it every day, all day, every day, once you do sit down to your magical practice or your meditation, you kind of already engaged, aren't you? You've got that, but it's not like, hang on, where do I start with this again? And then you wonder why your meditation was a bit muddy and it's like, it's a muscle almost. You've got to kind of work with it, and it's a lovely thing to work with, and it really is something to be treasured and valued. I know that sometimes when people are spell working, or sometimes when you think, oh, what should I use? What ingredients should I use for this spell? Rather than think, oh, I'll look up, see what this person did, or just think, well, what do I feel drawn to? What's the first thing I look at, and why? Let's have a look at it. Okay, then look it up, and it'll invariably be the exact thing you need. Same with crystals as well. Sometimes you just feel really attracted to a crystal, and you don't know why, and you just think, oh, I think I need a piece of that in my life, and then you look it up, and it's like, wow, it connects exactly to either a health problem or something you've been going through, and it's just such a lovely, lovely thing.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly. So good. And starting out with the moon cycle, that's what I do. And I like that people are getting, it seems like people are getting more into planetary, everybody, the astrology of things, and the planets and the retrogrades and this and the Venus, and just now starting to the lunar. But the lunar is so easy. We are made of water. We're run by water. It's the moon. So I agree wholeheartedly. And that's actually how I start my day. Okay, moon is waxing, I'm gonna out of my life. Moon is waning, I'm gonna let go of what's not serving. Moon is, like you said, the dark moon. So it explains so much.
Do you garden by the moon, Patti?
Yeah, not as much as I could or should, because again, though I'm in the middle of the city, I'm not in the middle of the city, I'm in the hills. My garden itself, kind of, it does what it wants to do, not what I want to do it, and I give it up to spirit and the squirrels, kind of.
Nice.
Do you garden? I probably could do more gardening by the moon, but it just seems to be run by critters. I don't know how you prevent that. It's
Fair
like,
enough.
I can't grow herbs, I can't grow this. Do you garden by the moon? Tell me about gardening by the moon for all my people who actually can do better than I.
Oh no, believe me, I mean, my garden is a bit of a mess, but it's I again, it's not long since we've moved here, and it's the first time I've had a garden for many years. My mum is a very natural gardener, and so I try to sort of remember the things she sort of told me, and I'm sort of trying to get herbs in there and stuff. But essentially, I try to weed during the waning moon, because it's when you want to get rid of stuff. And I try to kind of plant things in when it's waxing. And, you can't always time things that way, but it's nice to kind of think, oh, yes, as I'm kind of pulling the ground elder out, it's like, yeah, off you go. The dark moon's going to help me with this, the waning moon,
Yes.
And I like to sort of think that works. But I was talking to a chap who is, his name's RJ Tagala, and he is a conservationist and a ranger at Wicken Fen, which is there's lots of fenland around here in sort of Norfolk and Cambridgeshire, and he just said, so much happens by the moon, the calves that are born, the timing of it, whatever your beliefs, you can't deny it. It affects everything that that happens, that unfolds in these natural settings. So I need to sort of do a bit more gardening by the moon, I think. But yeah, weeding by the waning moon, it's it's a good start.
Okay. I could do that. The squirrels won't stop me from that. They might stop me from growing all the herbs I want to do, or they just eat them before I get to them.
Nah.
Otherwise, you have to do it, like build a fort around them, and it's like, that's not pretty. I don't want that. So that's my personal journey. So so what about working, like, what are some of your suggestions for people, whether they're just learning how to, again, this is about, I like that, witchful thinking, how to bring it into your life every day. Is there certain practices or rituals or like altars that you work with?
I do. I mean, I do have an altar, and I know that sometimes that is very much, something that is it's a luxury to have the space to have an altar for some people. I know if you live in a tiny apartment, you might think, oh, or if you maybe house share with people who aren't simpatico, I understand that it's not always an easy thing to do. I know there are possibilities. You can have a little kind of display on a shelf, or you can even have like a traveling altar with the bits and pieces that you need. But really, I think, although I do talk about that in a bit in the book, and I do work that way. I think it's important to say that ultimately, even if you haven't got the tools with you, I mean, you might be away and think, oh, actually, I want to work a little bit of magic, but I don't have my stuff. You don't need the stuff. I think that so much is down to our intention. So much more is in our control than we think. And I think if we kind of hone our focus and our intention, at the end of the day, it's all about, it's such a cliche, but it's all about energy, isn't it? So we're working with energy, we are energy. And so ultimately, yes, tools are great. They help us focus that energy. But if we don't have them at our fingertips, we have ourselves, we have our minds, and we have our words. And for me, words are so important. I'm a writer anyway, so naturally it's, that's a kind of a place of focus for me. But I think if nothing else, if you have nothing around you to work with, you've got your words, and wording a spell or wording your intentions very carefully is super important as well. So that's definitely something I would think of. And it's something to think of every day, not just when you're doing working magic. When you're in every conversation, think about the words you're using, because they're very powerful. That's why we call it spelling. Words are very powerful. They're charged, and especially when we put emotion into them. So it's something to kind of bear in mind in every conversation. So again, when we sit down and do our magic, whatever form that will take, I feel like it will give it extra power. But I also think from an everyday point of view, away from the kind of ritual thing, although I do love a good ritual. Again, if you're sort of working it into your life every day and just sort of trying to get the kind of magical mindset, I think that's really important, because I think, it's all very well thinking, oh, I want to live a witchy life, and I want to, there's a lot about the kind of witchy aesthetic on Instagram, which is obviously gorgeous, and Stevie Nicks and gothic, and we love that. But if you haven't worked on that magical mindset, there's only so far you can really take it. So I think all the things we've been talking about very much feed into that. I think also sort of working with things that you might not otherwise think of as magic. So the clothes we wear, the makeup, it's all, if you think about the magic in color, how much power there is in color. I think about color healing a lot. I know that's something that my members of my family have worked with and told me about. So there's a bit in there about that, thinking about that. So if you've got an important meeting that day where you want to be very persuasive, you might think about maybe wearing a bit of purple, which is a very kind of enchanting color, very engaging, or if you need a bit of strength, and you sort of maybe anticipating a confrontation at work or something, a bit of red, a bit of Mars energy, you can kind of tie it in with planetary correspondences as well, and other associations. So you can sort of take that down all sorts of roads. But at the very mundane level, you could, just what color you're drawn to can often be exactly what you need that day for some reason, to give you a bit of a boost, or to maybe even make you invisible. That's another thing. I think we can have invisibility cloaks. I think sometimes, black can, wearing black can give us a sort of invisibility. And I know that black is very associated with witches for all sorts of different reasons. But I think also if we decide, also black stones, like a piece of jet. Sometimes I'll take a piece of jet with me. And if I don't want to attract any attention from maybe a nosy neighbour, but I have to go out in my garden to do something, I will. I'll just like have a little conversation with the jet and say, well, look, can you just shield me from any attention that I don't want, and invariably I'm never bothered. So I don't know whether that's the act of just sort of almost saying something and then you kind of put something into being, or what, but something seems to happen that has the effect that I want.
Right. No, I think it's both. I think it is intent. I think it's society. I think it's the energy we put out. I am really good at doing invisibility cloaks when needed. It's like, or putting on a glamour, the same thing, but opposite. You run into your ex or your ex-lover, and you're like, oh God, I didn't brush my hair. It's like putting on a glamour, and they won't see it, or hide myself and they won't see you. It all works. And I think the witchy part, yes. And I am big about color and clothes. Everything can be nothing, or everything can be everything. I'm really big on what color panties are you wearing? Important business meeting. I, like you say, do the purple on the outside. I'm like, dark blue panties on those lower chakras would be really great. Same thing. It's like, and you've got what I call the mind, body, spirit, or creation working dispatch. Your mind is going there. This color panties or this color top is going to make me that much more powerful. So we're putting it in our headset, which we have to do, and then the magic coming off the color of it as well, or the stone. So I think it's a double win. But I ran a production company for a lot of times, and it was very like chaotic. We didn't have a theater. We were like theater on the run because we did a lot of corporate, and it was like, okay, you have to get from stage right to stage left, but there's no backstage. I would teach my actors how to invisibly get from stage right to stage left, and they weren't witches. They weren't even. It's just like, okay, now we take the and it's like, it's amazing how they learn to do it. You know,
I love that. That's fantastic. And that just says it all, doesn't it? It just goes to show, you know, you don't have to kind of be quote unquote a witch to do these things, because we all are working with the same stuff, which is energy. It's just sometimes, it might not occur to you to try, because you might just think, well, that's a bit weird. But it's just, I think that's the difference. It occurs to us to try because we know that we're working with energy, and it's like, well, why not? Why not try and find my husband just by asking my feet to take them? Or, why not try and be invisible as you walk across that stage? Just intend it and see what happens. It's always worth a try.
Yeah, because amazing how successful you will be. And again, I'm the same with you. I love tools. I show up with like 2 basketfuls of stuff, but if you have no tools, we are the tool. We have our receiving, we have our giving, we have our energy, we have our thought, we have an intent, we have our breath. So it's I think all about awareness. That's why your book shows people how to have this new perception, new awareness about things.
Thank you. I mean, and also taking what you were just saying just reminded me as well about the tools. To go back to what we were saying earlier in the conversation about the cunning woman or the wise woman, one of the things I really love about those old stories about those fabulous, essential figures in the village who could do everything from, many of them were midwives, or they would bring people in and out of the world. If someone died, they would know what to do. They'd know what herbs to sort of cleanse them. They'd just have all that knowledge at their fingertips. Often they would know what was going on in the stars. They might be the only person in the village who was literate in those days. They were it's a very interesting kind of history. But one of the things I love about that kind of side of things and the folk magic side of things, to draw on the conversation about tools, is that a lot of the things that they worked with were mundane items, like the pack of cards. You could do a reading with just a regular pack of cards. That's how I grew up doing that kind. I didn't read tarot, I read playing cards. That would never draw suspicion. Working with candles, chicken bones from the meal you've just made, you can use them for divination. All these different things which are actually, to the untrained eye, just like regular stuff you'd find in anybody's kitchen. But they used those. So really, if we can't afford that fabulous expensive wand, or that, I tune in with those guys, and I'm like, do you know what? They worked with what they had around them, and it was the magic was in them. They just were tools for magic to be worked, or the psychic work to be done. It's all in us, isn't it, really? So I just find that really lovely and exciting.
Yeah, me too. And the best ones I've ever had are often that stick you found and you're drawn to, and like, yeah, you want to stick something on it, you can. It's good. What are some of the dangers that you think people, again, and your book isn't about dangers because your book is all empowering and stuff, or what is something that if there's something you want to warn people about into this new world and new awareness?
Yes. Sorry, you were going to say.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to what my mum always advised me. She was always very, she had a real balance when I was growing up. And of course, when you're a teenager, or a young girl, you just want to know it all, don't you? And so she was very balanced in what she shared with me, but also with what she advised me to sort of steer clear from. And I still, work with those sort of parameters today. So I would say, protection, psychic protection was something that was always really drilled into me. Whether I even, if I was just sitting down to do a meditation, my mum would be like, are you psychically protected? So, I can't just sort of sit down and close my eyes and try and zone out. No, it's drilled into me. So, because of course, when you are sensitive anyway, and then you sit down and you kind of open yourself up, or you just go kind of blank or whatever, it can attract energies. And I think especially if you are very open, or you are doing work that opens you up, and that could be anything from a simple meditation to ritual work, it can attract wonderful energies, and it can attract exactly the energies you want. You could be calling in deities and angels, or whoever, spirit. But sometimes a very high vibration can also attract lower energies that are like, oh, I want a bit of that. Yes, I
Yes,
want a bit of that
yes.
light. I'm going to tune into that. And so, it's something to not be kind of freaked out by, but it's just something to be aware of, that to prevent that. Prevention is always better than cure. Think about how you want to psychically protect yourself. There's always lots of ways of doing that, and there's lots of books on it. How I like to do it is to kind of, I imagine myself kind of grounded to Mother Earth, and I imagine my roots going down like a tree, strong into Mother Earth, and I imagine lots of kind of healing, bright, strong energy coming up through my feet into my body. And at the same time, I kind of imagine those sort of branches, like, basically I'm turning into a tree, which is very much a happy place. My branches reach up to the heavens. It starts to draw down beautiful white light, the white light of spirit, or the divine, however you want to call it. And then I kind of imagine all this beautiful light coming from the earth and the heavens, amalgamating in the light in my heart. And then I kind of create a bubble of light that becomes so powerful and strong and as big as I want it to be, that literally nothing but the highest and best can even see it or be attracted to it. Certainly it can't get in if it's not the highest and the best. And those words, the highest and best, they kind of resonate with me, so that if I ever feel uncomfortable, or if I feel like I'm in a place that, the energy's a bit dodgy, I just think only the highest and best, only the highest and best. Quick as a flash, I feel better. And because I feel better, my vibration raises and I feel stronger, and then I just feel like it repels anything. Again, a lot of this is just about how we feel.
Right.
I think psychic protection is really, really important. I also think not, you have to take it seriously, don't you? You have to take the spirit world seriously. You have to understand that, we don't understand everything, and that we have to be respectful and careful with that. And while there are lots of beautiful forces and energies that want to help us and want to connect, like life on earth, there are lots of energies and people, and that maybe don't want the best and are kind of mischievous at best. And there's a little bit in the book about Ouija boards or talking boards. I know there's lots of people have different feelings about this. I was brought up, well, actually I did. It's very naughty of me. When I was brought up to believe that you must not do it. And I think maybe my mum had an experience when she was growing up. She was like, do not go there. You'll probably hear something, you'll probably get a message, but it either won't be what you want, or it certainly won't be who you think it is. And it can be very difficult to shut that communication down, because you're not really in control of it. So I think sometimes people are attracted by the ease with which we can kind of gain communication. But the fact is it who, are they who they say they are when they come through? And so, yeah, I was very naughty when I was a teenager. I did did do, and of course it was ridiculous. And you could tell it was almost like a naughty brother trying to scare you, and I probably got away lightly, but I know people who have had much scarier. It's just like, don't put yourself in that position. It's like, why would you, there are streets that not to walk down, because if you do, maybe it's a bit of a sketchy area, or a gang down there, you just don't do it, do you? So I see it in the same sort of way. There are some things that you just don't mess with. It's not worth it. And I think if you're going down this path, again, we all have to make our own decisions and choices. But it's always we're all kind of learning and evolving, aren't we? And I think when we're doing so, we're quite sensitive and open. And so, why spoil that for yourself? By kind of, because you can't resist, or you just think, it'll be easy to get a message through. Is it worth it?
Right. Well, and again, and I agree with you, the whole thing, as spirits wandering by, good, bad, or indifferent, they're going to look at your neighbor, go, they're a skeptic, they're not, they're under, and they're going to go see you or see me or see these people going, we can mess with them. They're going to see me or experience me, good, bad, or indifferent. So we do. I'm big on protection too, within a home, within energetically. Now, my experience with Ouija boards has been very different because when I was a kid, I've used them safely since I was 7 or 8 years old because I knew they would be safe for me. But I do believe if no one knows how to use them correctly, and I just kind of did. I think they should not be sold in toy stores. I think they should have a completely opposite set of directions. Like, this is not a toy. You don't want to go, is anybody out there? Anybody? You want anybody? Really?
Yeah.
You want to open your front door for anybody? The serial killer next door? No, be really specific. Like what you're saying, the highest and best, the highest and best. And then I believe that is what you will get. The 2 times I've had really bad troubles from that, I dropped the ball. I didn't have the protection set. So I don't think they should be told in toy stores, and I think it has to be taken really seriously. It's not a game, just like a practice. And being witches, we do create charmed lives. We do create this stuff. There's a responsibility to that. We are changing fate. We are changing the world. So, or our world, we're changing or in that. So there's a responsibility to that.
Absolutely right. That's such a good point. And it is. It's like, we have the kind of the option to bend our reality, to change our reality. And as you say, with that comes responsibility. I remember I grew up reading the writing of Marian Weinstein. Do you know Marian Weinstein? No, not
think
many.
I do.
She passed away a few years ago. She is wonderful. I'm always beating her drum. She was a New York witch. She was a comedian. She used to have a radio show in the 60s called Marian's Cauldron. And she was
Really?
Yeah, she was very ahead of her time. She was embracing YouTube pretty much when the platform was brand new. She was quite an elderly lady then, but she was making these fabulous, funny, witchy, beautiful videos with all her familiars around, and they were wonderful. But I grew up, and I'm really glad that one of the first books my mum had lots and lots of wonderful books around. I was very fortunate. They were just in the house, about mediumship, about astrology, about the occult, that sort of thing. I even remember there was a book about Kabbalah, but that was over my head at that time.
Yeah, right. That's very right.
Yeah, exactly. My dad as well, very, very, they were seekers, and they were very connected with that world. So that kind of literature was around me. But I remember, I think sometimes books find us as well, and items find us. And this book, Positive Magic by Marian Weinstein, definitely found me.
I'm writing that down. I'm going to get it.
Oh, it's wonderful. And, she was one of the people who I read, again, that sort of thing of not kind of worrying too much about tools, because, the words of power, that was her thing. It was all about words of power. She kind of, I just drilled myself with Marian's writing on that. But also, just being very conscious and being very careful about manipulation. And of course, technically all magic is manipulation, because we are changing things. And, it's just, are we doing it with good intent or bad? Are we doing it with respect for other people's free will or not? But it is kind of all, we are manipulating it all. It's just the intention behind it. So, she was very clear on all those things. And I think that gave me a really good grounding on how to approach magical work at a really good time in my life. And I used to take this book with me on public transport, and I'd covered it in silver paper. Oh, you found it? Oh, wonderful.
Oh, wow.
Judica's done the forward. This must be a new edition.
I don't know that book cover at all. That's so interesting. Thank you, mystical producer Rob in the background. See, magic is everywhere. It just pops up.
It is.
So check that. Anyway, I looking at the clock and like, I'm going to have you back because I have lots of questions. You guys have to check out this book, Witchful Thinking, by Zoe Howe. So tell us, everybody, Zoe, anything you have coming up, how people can find you, how people can get your books.
well. I've got a website which is www.zoehowe.com, and that can sort of, give you a general overview of what I'm doing and connect you with my sort of social media. But that's a good place to start. It's got all my other books on there, and I also sort of do a bit of art as well. So any kind of exhibition-y things go on there as well. But my radio show, which is a rock and roll witch, that's every month on Soho Radio, and that kind of brings together my two great loves of music and witchery, and that's lots of fun. So
Again, that's why I have to have you back to talk. I'm married to a musician. I'm married to a drummer, and Stevie Nicks is my girl. So are you a singer? Are you a musician? Or are you part of it?
Well, I also play drums, and my husband's a drummer, so it's a very noisy house.
Okay, then I'm gonna have to send you some Hollywood Drum Show sticks. My husband's a drummer, and we produce the
Oh,
Hollywood Drum Show. Oh my gosh, we are sisters from another
we
mother, another
are.
planet,
Oh,
another. All
great.
right, you're coming back. So again, zoehowe.com. Anything you have coming up, you guys check this out.